Required prayer and get our uniforms in order. Okay, with that out of the way, you can take your seats and let's get into today's lesson. We're going to have a quick overview of the comparative section, especially general vision and viewpoint. So the learning intentions for today are, as you can see on the screen here, an overview of the marks, time and rough page length. Secondly, we are going to identify different aspects of general vision and viewpoint. And finally, we're going to dissect an exam question. We're going to take a look at it and see how we'd answer it and what the examiners are looking for. Okay, so let's get straight into it. For the marks, we have 70 marks overall in this section, as we already mentioned in a previous video. So 70 marks, it's paper 2, so that means 70 minutes. Okay, 70 marks, 70 minutes, hour and 10 minutes to do this question. Page length is the tough part of this. Okay, I would say around 4 to 6 pages, although your mileage may vary on that one. Okay, it's kind of like how long is a piece of string, the classic that English teachers will tell you. This does change, but I would be aiming 4 to 6 pages. Okay, so we've gone through most of that. I think we can tick off that first part. Now next is identify different aspects of general vision and viewpoint. So as you can see here, general vision and viewpoint of a text is essentially the main ideas, the perspectives or opinions that can be taken from a text. Okay, the most basic way of separating the different strains of general vision and viewpoint is by splitting the aspects into positive and negative aspects. So in most of general vision and viewpoint questions, it'll be kind of asking you, well, what are the positive viewpoints? What are the negative viewpoints? Is this a positive text? Is it a negative text? Is it optimistic or pessimistic? And how does that manifest itself? How does that come about? How do we know that it's positive or negative? Now, we can go into more complex breakdowns of positive and negative when we get into emotions. We can split, well, what are some of the positive emotions that we had within this text? What are some of the more negative emotions we had? And we'll take a look at that a little bit later. So we can also separate it down into 3 different aspects, and this I have gotten from Evelyn O'Connor's website, leavingcertainenglish.net. It's a great website, loads of resources and loads of guidelines. So there'll be a link down in the description to that, so check it out if you have time. But here we go. So 3 different parts, and remember, optimism and pessimism is important with each of these. The intentions of the author. How is the author framing this text? Is it, as we go through the questions here, you'll see, well, why is the author writing this particular text? Why is this story being told? Is it a social commentary? And why this medium? Is the story best suited to the stage, big screen, or the novel? Okay. Is there anything in the author's background that is, dictating the story that they're telling? Why these characters, this setting, these actions? So again, we're constantly asking, why? Okay, do we empathize with the characters, the setting, or the circumstances? And why is it this particular scenario? What does this make me feel? Okay. What is the purpose of the text? What is the goal? Is the goal to impart knowledge on a certain topic, to entertain the reader? Or is the desire of the author to provoke a response, to make you feel something, to make you react in some sort of way? Where is the author coming from? What's their background, their beliefs? We know that in poetry, context is so important. Same could be said for these other written texts. Is the world of the text realistic or idealistic? And what we mean with this is kind of optimistic or pessimistic. Are good people rewarded? Are evil people punished? Or is there some sort of grey area, like with most of life's characters? The next big section, aside from the intentions of the author, is the perception of the reader. So how do we understand the various aspects of the written text? What's our relationship like with the protagonist, the hero, or the antagonist, the villain? Who can we relate to? Are these aspects of the setting that we can interpret in different ways? So, are there aspects of the setting that we can interpret in different ways? So, how we might feel towards characters, but yes, also towards setting as well. Does our analysis differ with the author's intentions? So, as I mentioned here, you have the power in the creation and certainly your interpretation of the text. It's created in your mind. So you have to give yourself some sort of power. So the text may be ambiguous, which is misspelled here, and you must fill in the gaps. For the most part, these texts take place in our minds, and that means your perception of the text is unique. Just because Johnny relates to Harry Potter doesn't mean that Mary will. So, you know, your favorite character in the Harry Potter series might actually be Voldemort, or, I don't know, Dudley, for some reason. Give yourself some power in your reading and understanding of the text. If there are specific differences between what the author puts down and what you pick up, that is incredibly important, and that may be where the significance of the story lies. So if we think of certain unreliable narrators, this is key, where we have a narrator, a first-person narrator that's biased or naive, gullible, that can't see everything, and then we have to piece, you know, what goes on, what is really happening in this context. So that can be really important. Perception of reader is really, really important, and especially since that's your personal engagement with the text as well. So is it more or less significant to our lives given our own circumstance? Is the setting relevant to me, the plot, the characters? So this, of course, if the characters are somewhat similar to you or going through similar things, you may relate more. And what is our involvement with and reaction to the text? Personal response is so important to general vision and viewpoint. It's kind of hard to say. And then the final aspect of general vision and viewpoint are the techniques, the ways that the author communicates their idea to the reader. So how do they throw us the ball? That yes, they throw us the ball, but how do they do it? And do we catch the ball, or do we catch something else entirely? Okay? So the medium that connects the author's view and our view. A play is very different to a novel and even a film. How does the way in which these stories are communicated affect us as readers? Some people their favorite text will be the novel. For others, it will be the play, the written play, of course. And for some, it'll be the film. Some people just like watching a film, and that's totally fine. So, what techniques are used to bridge the gap between reader and author? So, of course, dialogue, a conversation between two or more characters. Characterization, how characters are displayed and how they develop throughout the text. We have props, which are objects used on stage to promote realism. We have plot, which are basically just the events of the text. Symbols, these are things that represent more than just themselves. So think about the dawn is a great symbol for a new beginning. Okay, it represents more than just the sun rising. Relationships, how characters interact, whether this is nurturing and beneficial or destructive and harmful. That will give us our own vision of the text, how we perceive the text, what we think about the text. Okay, is it happy? Is it sad? Joyful? You know, is it jubilant? You know, what does the text make us feel? Narrative. Now, there's two aspects to the narrative here. One, the kind of narrative form, the beginning, the middle, and the end, kind of like the plot. How is it structured? How is it shaped? That can tell us a lot about the text. You know, is there use of in media res, where they begin in the middle of the story, in the middle of things? Music can have a great impact on how we view certain things. Because it reflects to mood and atmosphere, the general feeling of the text. So with general vision and viewpoint, that's kind of what we're looking at. What is the general feeling of the text, and how do we know that? Does it change throughout the text? All of that is important. Setting. So of course, where the text is set will tell us a lot about what the characters do and feel, and also our interpretation of that setting. Okay. Narrative perspective. How is the story being told? Through whose eyes do we see this text? Okay, so that has a major impact. Again, we talked about those biased characters and how they can influence certain things. Now, earlier we talked about positive and negative, and that's very broad. It's the general vision and viewpoint, which is totally fine, but we can also have a look at more nuanced emotions and more nuanced feelings, how we feel within the text at different times. So yeah, we can, happy of course is going to be positive, and you know, sad is generally considered negative, but these are just some things that we can branch out into to make our general vision and viewpoint a little bit more like a detailed vision and viewpoint. Okay, so yes, we do want it to be general, but we can also go into more detailed synonyms around here as well. I'm also just going to look at a question. This is our final aspect. And you can see this question from 2017, thankfully gotten from studyclicks.ie, great resource. And what I generally do is I have a look at the marking schemes to kind of tell me what are examiners actually looking for within this question. So I'm going to look at the 70 mark just as an example. So a variety of factors in text can change or reinforce our initial impression of the general vision and viewpoint. So factors that change or reinforce our initial impression. Compare the main factor or factors in 3 texts in your comparative course that change or reinforce your initial impression of the general vision and viewpoint of these texts. So our initial impression is really important here because we need to talk about the beginning of the text or each text. How are they presented and how does that make us feel? What is our perception or observation of these texts? And also the factors that can change or reinforce these after the beginning. So what is our initial impression? And then how does that change or become strengthened throughout the text? So within this one, we might be talking about, characters, their relationships, our initial impression of characters, our initial impression of setting, our initial impression of the writer's style. So all these aspects could come up here, and then we can talk about, well, does the writer's style change? Do the characters change? If so, how do they change? What are the key moments that affect that change? So let's have a look at the marking scheme and see if we've done this half decently. Destructive nurturing relationships, of course. Our response to one or more relationships. Again, relationships come up quite a lot. Conflict, development, resolution, fate of the relationships. They've really focused on relationships here for what, oh sorry, that's number 1. Silly me. So a variety of factors, blah, 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 blah. So unfolding plots, key events, turning points, twists, growing knowledge of characters and relationships. There we go, relationships one more time. The fate of characters may alter, reinforce our initial impression. So what happens to them at the end of it? The moral balance of the text. So the balance of good and evil can be altered or sustained. Shifts in mood, tone, atmosphere conveyed through these techniques that we talked about. The impact of the author's approach, comic, serious, tragic, realistic. And then the resolution of conclusions of text can often determine our overall view, the general vision and viewpoint of the text, reinforcing or changing our initial impression. So we talk about our initial impression and the factors that change those. Okay, so that is all. We're going to go into more detail about how to unravel this indicative material in our next video. Okay, stay safe guys, goodbye and good luck.